Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Soulganize Your Life podcast. So, the outer circumstances of our lives are always stimulating our inner environment. And I, as a psychiatry or psychologist type of person, view that through the ego, which is one of the ways, our psychological ego that's distorting our viewpoints. And then also through, as a spiritual person, through our divine soul connection to all that is. So, why is it important to know the difference between these two perceptions? Well, that is where our guests come in. And that is so that they can help us relate to this inner conflict within ourselves and give us the ideas on how to integrate these two perspectives so that we can have one full human, beautiful experience. So I'd like to introduce Debbie Whittam. She's a fellow mental health provider. I don't even know where you're located, Debbie. Where are you at?
I'm in Pittsburgh. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right. Yeah. And so, just keep introducing yourself to our program here about your journey of becoming a therapist.
I will. Thanks for having me on your show. It's great to get to know you and the work you're doing. So for me, ego, the word pride comes up. And being a sober woman, right? I have 20 years in recovery, one day at a time, sometimes 5 minutes at a time. As I'm working to become an even more productive, more authentic. So there's my favorite word. Woman in society, person, to help myself first and then others. The whole idea about the ego, I'm wondering, like for me, when I think about authenticity, I wonder how far back we all have to go to when we weren't doing another part of ourselves for survival alone. So I'll just speak from my
pretty far. Pretty far.
Yeah, pretty far. That's what I'm thinking. So we're born pretty authentic. I'm not sure how much, longer that can stay the soul, the absolute essence of that purity. And for me, never blaming, right? I'm not here to blame parents and family members. And that seems to have gotten me nowhere. I certainly did it. But the universe plopped me into this family that I was raised in with two parents who were ill-equipped. They wanted to have kids, 50s, right? So I was born in 57. By the time I got to be about a year or two, something was telling me to climb out of the crib, toddle down the stairs to the neighbor downstairs. My mom used to tell the story all the time. She thought it was funny. No, wait. I mean, really. So to be able to, whatever I was feeling, unsafe for sure. I wanted to knock on the door of the neighbors. Right? That whole part of me needed to get out of there.
Wow. And you remember that?
So
do you remember that?
That part of me, that I remember parts of it. I remember, God bless my mom. She's passed. So she was raised in the 30s in the Depression, where the mom ran away from the family. The dad put all of the kids, my mom being one of the 5 of them, in orphanages. They kept the animals. Of course, this is the Depression time, but the kids go in. Okay. So this broken soul of a woman, and that happened when she was 3, had 5 kids, and I was the first, right? So she was so desperate to be dependent on my dad, who's also passed, and I was the firstborn. So she had all expectations about how this was going to go. In the 50s, it was Dr. Spock, and you let the baby cry, and all this happy horse hooey, right? And I think, long story short, it brought me to having very early memories. I remember falling down I remember that feeling of falling down the stairs. I was 2.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
2, had climbed out of the crib and had gone down the stairs. I would always ask my mom, "What do you think I was why was I trying to leave?" "Oh, I don't know. You know you're" okay, I can channel my mom. Um, so, I mean, I have an idea, that authentic part of me, "I gotta get out of here,"
Wow.
remains, right? That remains with me, that,
Oh,
sense of
no.
myself in danger. So, now what I what I equate to, the soul being authentic are all the times when things happened throughout my life, like a near drowning when I was 10.
Mm,
Um, it's not in the wonderful, brilliant, happy times that I grow more into my authentic self, it seems. It's more along the lines of um, the difficult times that I remember when my dad would drive madly down the road, drunk out of his mind, petrified that I wasn't gonna live. By that time, there were 3 kids. I mean, there was all of this very chaotic life.
wow.
The part that became inauthentic was making sure that if my mom was okay, I would be okay. If my
Oh,
father was okay, I would be okay. It's like the layman's terms for codependent. If
yeah.
you are okay, then I can breathe again. So that
I've
happened to me early on, I'm sure. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say I've never heard codependency explained so exquisitely. Like I viscerally
Oh,
could
thank you.
picture you as a child. Like
Yes.
my heart was like, oh my gosh, when I was hearing your story. And what I'm hearing you say is that's not even an ego, what we're talking about wanting to escape. That was a human body just feeling this instinctual understanding of like, I'm not safe. And then because of having that experience, you just pointed out, so I built my ego's defense mechanism, which is worrying more about my mother and father's emotional experience than my
Yes.
own. And that starts, boom, that's where the ego goes, okay, I got it. I know how to survive a childhood of chaos and struggle. And holy
Yes.
cow, I mean, it's just so eloquently explained. Like I viscerally, you're a great storyteller. I could picture you when you were telling me the story. So keep going, but that was really,
Thank
I
you.
understood
Thanks.
it to be what you're saying. Okay, so when did you understand at a later date in your life that you had an ego? Was it through studying, traditional psychology?
It was, I'd say, when most of my awarenesses start, because where I was raised, again, I was raised in this tiny little town in upstate New York near the Adirondacks. It was Peyton Place. If you've seen the old
Mm-mm.
movie, everyone knows everybody else, what your grandmother's name, what you had for dinner the night before. I had 63 people in my graduating class. Oh my God. We kindergarteners graduated together. So there was no
Mm,
great growth, right? We're pigeonholed and so on and so forth.
okay.
What happened was I was hardwired in to be a pleaser, to think of
Yes.
others, right? The codependent. Although I didn't think so, but my very existence, that pride, was to try to be a pleaser for you and keep your attention.
Mm,
So where someone else might, and definitely myself, which I had no clue, was how you looked, how you talked, your mannerisms. I mean, nothing. And this kind of gets hardwired in when many of us are raised in environments where if there are any needs at all, we'd better not show it.
You
Like,
better not
don't,
what?
no
Show it?
crying, no,
Mhm.
do not show it. Do not have any needs. My parents had the most needs and they did. So by the
Mm.
time I graduated from high school, right? That that passage where we all kind of, whether we're knowing what we want to do or not, know where we want to go, that leaving the pack and going out, that's one of the biggest passages of all time because
Mhm.
there's really no way to know how to do that
Yeah, yeah.
at all. So we go to college, for instance, like I did, drinking myself to the core
Mm.
because finally the level of anxiety I had always had hardwired in from littlehood. I remember saying I was in the girls' bathroom. There were cold cement block walls, right? Painted in the, and I remember drunk on Halloween, leaning against the cold cement walls, and I saying to myself, I love this effing feeling. Finally.
Wow.
Am
Wow.
I gonna be okay? Yes, alcohol. And there was the solution. I could find my purpose, my, sense of me. I could I mean, I'll talk to the wall if it would listen now, and I always was, but there was an ease, less of an awkwardness with, I didn't really know how to belong with the whole, being in college. I mean, at all. I was not worldly. My parents hadn't gone to college. This is never blaming them at all, ever, because their
Yes.
stories are really intense. But this is when I speak with people, it's like, but what's most important is your narrative, right? When I'm with a client.
Yes.
So my narrative, it's exactly what, like you're helping me with now. What was it? And I mean, there was no sense of myself at all,
Mm.
if you can, imagine that. So there, the ego probably was all there was, to tell you the truth,
Because it
or
was
that,
everything. It was everything you experienced outside of yourself, is what you're saying. Like
oh my gosh,
I only knew life as what happened outside of me. I wasn't allowed to have needs. I wasn't allowed to be safe. Right. So I had to hyper vigilantly watch the outer environment, which is the ego, in my opinion. It's a set of beliefs attained from the outer circumstances, right? Versus,
yes.
you know, I guess, was there a time when you were in your training or where someone introduced you to the word ego and you're like, oh, do I have one? Like that's a thing? Like, did that happen? Do you remember that?
I
Do you
do.
remember
I'm
how
trying to remember it. It was, sorry, I
no,
keep
I was just saying, do you
interrupting you.
remember? No, no, no. I think I'm interrupting you. But
That's okay.
yeah,
I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember. So what happened was the thing about being addictive in nature, for me being an alcoholic, which probably happened the first time I drank because it's like, I didn't drink like anyone else. When everyone else was done, I was still, that was throughout the
Yeah.
whole 28 to 30 years of drinking progressively. I did a lot of reading and mostly I'm sure the one book that stands out to me is The Tao of Pooh, which I
Mm,
love that book.
mm,
And all the different cast of characters that reside within me. I love me a stage. And so I love performing. I was
mm.
Chicken Little in the first grade, I'll have you know. So I'm going to say that's when ego came because, girlfriend, when I had someone laugh when it was first grade. So it was all the
Mhm.
wooden chairs were pressed against the wall. My mom came and I remember that as if it was yesterday.
Wow.
And I was the best Chicken Little of all. So ego. I loved the attention. So I guess that's it. But as
Yeah.
far as learning, um, I went to I went to Vienna. I've spent money on traveling because that's authentic to me. From
Mm.
climbing out of the crib, I never stopped searching. And yeah, I love international travel and so on and so forth. But I believe before I went into grad school, I went my one of my best friends lived in Munich. So when I visited her, I took this side trip to Vienna. And that's when I really learned about the ego because I went to see Freud's house
Wow.
where he was before he moved to London. So I saw the couch actually, when he began to do his work, was taken to London and it was shipped there back in the day. But
Hmm.
in that space, right? The Psychoanalysis Society and the photos of Freud and all the other people, Adler, I believe, that's when I started to learn about ego. But
Okay.
I, of course, you see, didn't have one because I was pretty sure that, can you hear it? I was very humble. There's no, not at all. But as you've described, there's a very desperate inner part of me
Mm.
that is afraid to be invisible. That's as
Mm.
real to me. And so trying to find a stranger to help me has also remained throughout my life. You know, a lot of these things hardwired in early, research tells us, um,
Yeah.
like feeling neglected or lost or confused. Being confused can remain our entire life.
Mm.
If there isn't a whole lot of reassurance, soothing, and the one thing that remained was ego for me
Yeah.
throughout. But I learned it studying Freud, actually going um, to his house, and I bought a couple books and just learning about how he started doing what he was doing and what he thought of the ego and the id and so on and so forth.
And so,
So
when did you first realize that you could be authentic? I know that's the word that you really resonate with.
yeah,
So, at which I would say this the soul is the connection, right, to your authenticity. Um,
I
and
agree. I love that.
yeah, when did you,
I
I
love
guess, when did you decide that you had something else to connect to, whatever you call it or however you called it? Like, what was that journey like for you?
Great question. Thank you. I love this part. One of the worst things to happen ultimately became the very best.
Mhm.
So my drinking, we never get better at it. Although I was pretty sure. Here's girlfriend. I'm sorry, but I was so sure. I was the life of the party, married with 2 kids. And the things that I hear now, I'm in a recovery program, and we all say some of the same things. And what
Mm.
happened on March 21st, 2004, the drinking part, alcohol, I remember being told, Debbie, alcohol isn't a preservative, which was a shock to me. I thought I was helping myself and taking, Am I going to be okay? Which is the title of my book. If there's enough alcohol, if there was enough men, if there's enough food, if there's enough money, just on and on, filling that
Mhm.
emptiness. So I was at my psychiatrist and I was suicidal. I had been taking antidepressants, but things were getting worse. When
Mm.
she would ask me, this was about 5 years I was seeing her, when she would ask me, now remember this new medicine I'm putting you on, you can't drink. So how many do you
Oh,
drink at all? Not much. Not much. This is what we all say. It's
yeah.
always just had 2. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, I drank my ass off. It just became more, that tolerance, I needed something stronger more often, right? So that's kind of the progression of going from beer and wine to something stronger, and then you're drinking vodka out of a bottle straight, blah, blah, blah.
Mm,
Unfortunately, which is
mhm,
where we go, where I
mm,
went. Let me just say this.
mhm.
So March 21st, I'm talking to my psychiatrist, and she said, well, we're going to have to look at, instead of being in a depressive disorder, looking at some of these, which I didn't even realize, but the personality disorders, right? So if you're going
Mm,
to narcissistic or borderline or that cluster
mhm.
B of in the DSM, I panicked and almost fainted because to me, my deepest, darkest fear was going insane. And I was
Ah,
just on the edge of it my entire life. And this is a whole lot in one short amount of time, but
yeah.
I was always anxious and it felt like I was losing my mind
Mm.
always. So alcohol helped until it didn't. So she said, "This is what I suggest you do." Because I was like, "No, no, I'm not that. I drink." She's like, "What?" I
So
didn't
she
want
called
to.
you out. That's awesome. She called you out. I love
Yeah,
it.
and I sold myself out because it's like, "No, you can call me alcoholic. I will shout that to the world. Do not call me mentally ill." And that's what I
Oh,
was, which I am. I mean, I have mental illness. Yeah, I'm not sure who doesn't have some form of high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, and a storyline that goes all the way back some generations. Voila,
mhm,
done.
mhm.
So, and not to typecast us, but that particular time, I told her, I said, I don't want to be mentally ill. I said, but I drink a lot. I drink a lot. So
Yeah.
the poor dear, and we don't. I didn't. I'm not going to tell her the truth. I haven't told the truth since I was 3. I mean, I'm not going to
Mm,
tell these people.
got
And there
you.
we go
Oh,
with authenticity in my soul, right?
yeah.
So getting sober, long story short, beginning the journey of not drinking at all, and having come to that bottom broke me open. That being broke
Mm,
open, which
yeah.
looked like a nervous breakdown, was actually being broke open and being able to be willing to find another way. Because I thought money was the answer. I swear to
Yeah.
God, I was
Yeah.
shocked when married, 2 kids, had this beautiful big home, 3 cars in the garage. I wanted to kill myself inside that beautiful big home. I was
Wow.
like, this, my soul couldn't stand the life I was living. It was inauthentic.
Wow.
It
So
was,
you had this moment with this psychiatrist where
yes,
you were more afraid of being called crazy than um,
yep,
admitting
exactly.
what the truth was. And it was the first time in your life you'd been authentic, but it broke you open. Basically, your ego had nowhere to
Yes,
go. It said, "Oh, I'm
nowhere to
caught.
go,
I'm caught.
nowhere to
We're
go.
done." And
Yes, and
so instead of
I'm giving up. Yeah,
yeah, instead of dying
yeah,
yourself, right? Because you wanted to kill yourself, you basically tried to kill your ego, or it had to kind
yeah.
of take a back seat at that point and be like, okay, well, to save my life, this is what I got to do. And wow, I can imagine how painful that was.
It was so painful but hopeful.
Yeah.
And I got to the point, that's why I have my own private practice. I'm a psychologist, mental health professional. And I tell, there's all this ethical rules and regulations.
Yes.
And being an alcoholic myself, I do not tell me what to do. I see I have a lot of work to do still. I have to be willing to take suggestions, Debbie. Okay, well, yeah, here's a suggestion for you. That's that body, bold part of myself that I
Yeah.
loved when I was drinking. It was no fun to be around them.
I don't
So
know. So far, you're
taking
making me laugh a lot.
good. I know. So you're great to speak with, and I love so the stories um that I heard. So my psychiatrist said, because I was begging her to not put me away forever. That's what I
Mhm,
thought. My deepest,
mhm.
darkest fear since I was little was of going insane. Got that idea somewhere. Like my mom, I don't know what we're going to do with you, Debbie. I don't know if
Mm.
we can help you or not. And
Oh, wow.
I'd be like, but this was her, not making excuses, but she was the mother left when she was 3 back in
Yeah.
depression, then put into orphanages. And
Yes.
her story, it's so sad. And my dad's as well, both from very meager beginnings. We were a meager unit ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sure money was the answer. It had
Ah,
to be.
got you.
Um, but that all went to the wayside. Money, no money. It's this box that we talk about in addiction recovery. I wanted to die but not kill myself. Kill
Yes.
myself but not die. It's that
Mm.
awful place where people come to a bottom, if it is, and if they live through it, whether it's drugs, heroin, opiate, awful, just any way to get out of ourselves, to kill
Yes.
off the soul like you're talking about, and the inauthentic, lying through my teeth. I was proud of being. And the beauty of getting sober was to be able to look at the pride and ego that I was
Mhm.
carrying just so that I could have a place in the world. I didn't think me on my own meant much of anything.
Mm.
There was
Mhm.
zero worth and value. My
Yeah.
only worth and value was if I did something for someone else and then felt worse after. That was the pattern. It's like, okay,
Wow.
now can I stay? Now can I? And once I got sober and stayed, my psychiatrist said, I can correctly diagnose you after you've been sober for about a year to 18 months because the body chemistry and the brain chemistry needs time. But those of us who have that instant gratification fix, I want it like yesterday. No, no, no. I want to feel better now.
Yeah.
Ego, pride, all of those things. I know our time is running out, but I have so
No, no,
much to
no.
talk about.
I know. Well, so
Um,
let's switch over to how this informs your daily work with your clients. Who do you like to work with? Who are your clients?
mostly I'm working with 20 somethings now, right? I mean,
Really?
all ages, all ages. I cannot do little kids. Little kids bother me. I don't know why. But it's like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. My daughter's a psychologist and she works with little kids.
Oh,
I used to work with adolescents, but right now it's the 20 somethings, right?
mm,
The 20 somethings where people are saying, isn't this time of life wonderful? No, it's the most difficult time for most people, right? What am I going to do? I'm going to college. This isn't, again, starting after high school. The pressure is on. The parents' money is sending us off to college. We have no idea. We think we want to do this, but not do that. Now we're graduated. And a lot of the 20 somethings I've heard now are starting to say, what's the point?
yes.
What's the point?
Yes. And I wonder,
COVID,
yes.
please.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, I wonder if it's not alcohol addiction anymore, but screen addiction or gambling or, porn addiction, which is what I see a lot with clients is the screen is just
Yes.
destroying people's sense of that they are a soul, that they have human to human connection in an authentic way. Like a lot of that is lost. They're not even exercising the same. So I'm just kind of wondering, like how does what you went through inform what kind of client is a really good fit for you now?
If anyone is crushed to their soul, especially with addiction, they're my people.
Yes.
Come to me. I'm the Pied Piper, especially grief. So my master's program was grief and loss and its impact on addiction. And we hear it all the time since the beginning of time. He drank somewhat, but once his wife died, there was no turning back. And
Yes.
that was my experience too when my beloved best friend died in 1980, 1998. There wasn't
Wow.
enough alcohol. It's this, so it's loss of any kind. But with addiction, it's drugs, alcohol, eating, not eating. Those are the most fatal, right?
Okay.
Losing the choice to do something or not is how they define addiction.
Yeah.
Spending, sexing, gambling, and
Yeah.
then the ones that look good but aren't, yes, that look good are God, work, exercise. And those
Yeah.
three can become as extreme for the people around anyone. So you've got to
Mm,
do anyway. And so those, but anyone who's been crushed, that's been broken open and is seeking, especially having panic attacks. Panic attacks are what brought me to my first therapist. I mean,
mhm.
I was going insane. I was 20 something. It was awful. I
Mm.
had nowhere to
Well,
go. I'm now an adult.
yep.
Yeah.
Well, we have that in common. I grew up with panic attacks.
Yes. And so many people now, and COVID is a whole other thing. The 11th and 12th graders who went through it, they are, they lost the whole rites of passage at the end of the
Yeah.
senior and junior years. How
Yes.
they are, how their lives are playing out now. Kindergarten and first graders, when they had to stop mid-year,
Mhm.
and their development or lack thereof, a lot of that stuff is very interesting to me. But for me, it's about when someone is at the end of their rope, and then we're working on, do I want to live or not? That's
Wow.
my people.
That's
Those are my
deep.
people, because
Well,
I've
and
been there.
yeah, and I think what else I'm hearing you say in the background is how important it is for people to be supported during, like you said, a rite of passage. And I've often thought, like, there is none. If you don't go to CCD, right, or if you don't do your bat mitzvah or whatever, like the average person in this country has zero rites of passage. They're pushed into something without any real understanding of what it means. There's no
Yes.
ceremony,
Yes.
there's no ritual, there's no elders circling around them and saying, like, we get it, we all did this. If anything, we're all like, it's just the next step, just go. And so I feel like that's another, besides people who are, what's the point, it's also people who are going through this, not just a transition, because we transition all the time, but like I missed that ceremonial piece to my life where one part was truly closed. I am no longer a child. I am an adult, or I'm no longer single. I'm married. I'm no
Yes.
longer married. I'm divorced. I'm widowed. Something where it's really over.
Yeah.
And I feel like you said, there's no amount of
Good point.
alcohol. There's no amount of alcohol to soothe that.
No.
And you sound like such a non-judgmental person to decompress with. So I hope people do find you, because, and
Thank you.
I'm guessing you use humor, because you've made me laugh.
It is all so effing funny, but it's not. My mom, a little tiny Italian, my dad, real tall German. She, of course, ruled the show, but they
Yes.
would go back and forth. There wasn't any parent that kind of stood down so that we could see that maybe we were going to survive
Mm,
one more night of, no, they were both. So there was
wow.
really harsh, scary battles, but they were funny, both of them. And when they were doing well, in the occasion that they were doing well, yeah. So I've gotten my sense of humor, and it is. I mean, the wisdom of the years, getting guidance from our elders. That's a big travesty,
Yeah.
because from the Native Americans to Italy to Germany, all of the wisdom of the years means nothing, unfortunately. It's
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah.
And so I hear what you're saying, and I would love to get that authenticity of what I've learned through the years, where my soul has grown and I haven't given it away. Huge. That's
Mhm,
huge
mhm.
that I'm not giving my soul away anymore.
Yeah, and I love that you want to work with
That I wanna
20s.
be exactly the way I am, authentic.
Yeah, and that you really appreciate the idea of the 20-year-old, right? That you are a wise woman at this point and that you can
Yes.
support someone that you really are generationally different from because you do know what they need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can be 20 in a heartbeat. I'm 67, but I'll tell you the F what. I can be in this is ageless in here, so
Yeah.
I don't even know how old I am half the time. And that's why sometimes it's like, well, I think I'm adult. I don't know. How my daughter's far more adult. She's like this, which
Yes.
I always wish to be, and I'm like, "Oh my god, isn't this great?" to crying because something's impacted me so, but I've loved
Yeah.
being on this with you.
Oh, thanks. Well, how do people find you?
So I have a profile in Psychology Today, so people can read about my profile, and Psychology Today accepted it, so that's great. But I really tell on myself. I say, I am in recovery. I have myself gone through my own mental health issues, working on that, divorced. I have been through many things. And with most of this, my attempt is, as you said, to be non judgmental, not critical. I was raised with ridicule and shame and remained confused for a very long time. So my hope is to see that in other people and
Mm,
not be that way because many
yeah.
people are raised in it and become it. And I was that way drinking.
Yeah.
Nasty.
So so what's your
So I
website?
try not to be now. I'm grateful. So my website is deborahwhittam.com. DeborahWhittam.com. And I have a podcast. I've written a couple books about this very thing.
Yeah.
Am I going to be okay? Weathering the storms of mental illness, addiction, and grief, woven in
Wow.
every family.
Wow.
Yeah.
And to keep your
So,
humor through all that, that is your soul for sure.
mm,
Wants to be happy on
and
this
my
planet.
first chapter, yeah, my first chapter is called The Driving Lesson. It's me at 5 years old helping my mother learn how to drive. So funny. So funny. I knew she was not going to be able to do it. And I had learned from my father at 5. There's this and it was stick shift for heaven's sake. I was like, Mom, and I
Wow.
remember my little finger saying, Mom, it's an H. And you did, and our German neighbor, Gladys, was a nurse, and she hated teaching my mom how to drive, but nobody else wanted to do it because she was scared. She was like, "Oh my God, Debbie, am I going to be okay?" That's where I got the title. Am I? God bless her soul. Am I
That,
going to be okay? It's not me asking. It's what I heard my mom ask me my entire life.
oh my
And when
gosh.
I would ask her, when I right? I have so many people who are like, "Oh my God, I have to read that because I so relate to." And I take my readers on a journey with me. It's a creative nonfiction about
Yeah.
certain times without blaming anyone, but here are the facts. And
Wow.
we this is how we survive and survive well.
Wow.
Getting to a bottom we live through and becoming authentic. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's sure to be entertaining if you get her book. So
Yeah.
DeborahWhittam.com.
Yeah.
You're also on LinkedIn and you have books and things people can, and a podcast. So people can search in
Uh-huh.
variety of
And a
ways.
podcast. Yeah. And yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun. Let's do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I hope to have people on more than once because these are fun conversations. So please do.
Yeah. We'll
All right.
talk
Thank
again.
you.
And I would likewise like to have you on mine.
All right. I will do that. All right. Have a
Hope
great
and
rest of your
truth.
day.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.